Well, for more on Mexico's back-to-school plans as well as the situation in Latin America as a whole, I'm joined by Laura Carlson. Laura is director of the Americas program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So what trends are we seeing with Mexico's case count and vaccination rates compared to the rest of the region?
Well, Mexico has now gotten to about a quarter of the population that's been vaccinated with both doses, that's fully vaccinated. And Mexico began strong, and then they had a deficit of vaccinations, of doses, which of course is the case for all of Latin America and for all of the third world because of the unequal distribution that we're seeing across the globe. Now they've started up again. They generally speaking went in age groups, but they also included teachers among one of the first groups to be vaccinated. So that's about where they are now. There's reportedly, a fairly large shipment of vaccinations coming from the United States. So they'll be able to accelerate that a little bit, but they still haven't reached those lower levels, including students who would be going back to school.
And speaking of that, obviously a lot of parents and educators worried now as everyone is looking at returning to school. How have the people of Mexico reacted to this mandatory return to class?
Well, it's been split. There's a great deal of political polarization within the country. And so there's different surveys that are out, but they're not always reliable. We don't have like a statistical measure for how people are responding to this. And schools are receiving messages from parents on both sides. There's a great deal of concern. There isn't a lot of clarity about all the measures that will be taken. The Secretary of Education has put out a series of points that has to do with the sanitary measurements. They're trying to take into account as well kind of the mental health status of the students as they come back to school. It's been a rough year and a half, almost 2 years now, with the pandemic and with all these changes. So on the one side, there are parents that are very concerned and opposition to the López Obrador government, and also a certain part of the teachers union that are against going back to school. And on the other side, there are families and the students themselves, according to a nationwide survey by the Human Rights Commission, they're 70% in favor of going back to school. It's been particularly hard, of course, on them. And so you do have a divided situation now, but one of the biggest problems has been the uncertainty, and of course the fact that Mexico is right now kind of at the peak, or what we hope will be the peak, and it will continue to climb, of this third wave of the COVID contagion, and seeing a lot of the Delta variant.
So then, as children return to school, then what sort of safety measures are going to be enforced?
They'll be masked, they have hand washing, they say they're going to be distributing antibacterial gel, they are doing tracing. They say they're not going to close down schools when there are cases that are detected. They're going to do tracing and monitoring of specific outbreaks within the schools. They're going to create participatory committees with the parents to talk about how to cooperate to control the contagion. These are the measures that we know so far. There need to be more measures because you have to take into account that they're going back not only in difficult conditions because of the third wave of the COVID variant, which has caused almost 18,000 cases a day and 1,000 deaths a day was the last reading, but also because the schools are not really in a condition to have the kind of ideal installations to be able to receive students again and to be able to control contagion. There are 15,000 schools that don't have water. There are schools that typically have up to 50 students in each classroom. It's not clear how they're spreading it out. They've also said they're going to try to make maximum use of open spaces, right, and maintain safe distance, but it's not an easy situation.
There certainly isn't any sort of blanket solution here. So then, do we know just very quickly how do education officials plan to address the inevitable learning losses, especially for rural and indigenous families?
No, they're going to continue with some online learning if people want that option. There's a lot of it that's up to the individual schools that they're going to have to figure out how to deal with this. But that problem that you mentioned is a very serious problem, because not only with the lack of access to technology, and they did do radio schooling to make up for people who might not have computers, but there's not only that problem that has created an inequality gap in schooling throughout the third world, but particularly in Mexico. But there's also the problem that this is a health crisis that comes on top of an economic crisis. And so there was a huge degree of desertion from school, and the inscriptions are down this year because students just quit to go to work. And there's been an increase in child labor as well. So how you bring people back into the system with families that are suffering economically as well as with health concerns, seems to be a challenge that has not been fully met. And we're still waiting for some more detailed plans about how to confront that, and in a context in which there's still division about the different options, particularly the option to return to the classroom.
Well, hopefully we do see some solutions coming to the forefront. Thank you so much. Laura Carlson there, Director of the Americas Program.